There's a part of your life you hide. Think about it for a second.
There's an area you feel so terrible about. You've decided the best strategy is to pretend it doesn't exist. Maybe it's about money. Maybe it's about your body, your family, your career, a relationship. It is the one topic that you must address, but the last one you ever want to. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about shame. I can feel the weird tension that statement creates. I can predict with almost total certainty that a percentage of people watching right now will find this conversation too uncomfortable and they will click away. If that's you, I truly understand. But if you're still here, it's because you know that this isn't just another self-help topic. You know that in our modern world, with the internet acting as a 24/7 shame-amplifying machine, this conversation is more critical than ever. This is not a feel-good video. This is a deep, potentially unsettling exploration that I hope will be the last one you ever need on the subject. I'm Sam Carter, and I feel compelled to share this because at a point in my own career, I felt a deep sense of emptiness and confusion. It led me to pause everything and begin a journey, not for answers, but for better questions. What I'm sharing today isn't dogma, it's a map I drew for myself, connecting philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience to navigate my own life's challenges. And the territory I found myself lost in more than any other was shame. By the end of our time together, you will understand the fundamental mechanics of your own shame, and you will have a clear path, not to eradicating it, but to developing a healthier, more honest relationship with it. But before we try to fix this feeling, we have to do something radical. We have to honor it by understanding where it came from. So I need you to forget about your current problems for a moment. We're going to travel back in time, 50,000 years. Imagine you're in a prehistoric tribe. There are about 50 of you. That's it. That's your entire universe. Life expectancy is around 30. The philosopher Thomas Hobbes wasn't wrong when he described life back then as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Modern archaeology suggests that for most of our history, up to 20% of humans died from violence, murder. In this world, your survival depends entirely, 100%, on the tribe. Your food, your safety from predators, your warmth, your chance of finding a mate, it all comes from the group. So, in a world with stakes this high, what happens when you violate the group's expectations? What happens when you lie, when you steal food, when you fail on a hunt and return with nothing? The consequences aren't a bad performance review or getting unfriended on social media. The consequences are lethal. For 90% of human history, our brains evolved in this high-stakes environment. Social rejection wasn't an emotional wound, it was a death sentence. And this unforgiving reality engineered a powerful piece of software deep in our neurobiology, a kind of internal shame radar. Think about it. In the tribe, your mistake wasn't just about you. If you stole another family's share of the hunt, their child might starve. If you failed in your duty as a lookout, a predator could wipe out half the tribe while they slept. Your reputation wasn't a matter of vanity, it was a life or death ledger of your value to the collective. So your brain evolved to become hypersensitive to the possibility of social violation. It became obsessed with how others perceived you. This internal radar doesn't just calculate external risk, it internalizes it. The thought process isn't just, if I do this, they won't like me. It becomes, the fact I even want to do this means there is something wrong with me. I am bad. That feeling. That sinking, horrifying feeling of being fundamentally flawed. That is shame. It's an evolutionary tripwire designed to stop you from doing anything that could get you ostracized and killed. It is not a bug, it is a feature. It was necessary for our survival. Which brings us to the central, agonizing problem. So what? Why does this matter to you now, sitting in a safe room, watching this on a screen? If this programming was so essential for survival, why does it feel like a self-destruct sequence today? Because that ancient survival software, when running in the complex, hyper-connected, and strangely isolating modern world, creates devastating downward spirals. And the fundamental paradox of shame is this: the more you try to run from it, the more power it has over you. It feeds on darkness and secrecy, and it usually pulls us into one of three destructive loops. The first is the isolation spiral. You feel shame about something. That shame tells you that you are unworthy of connection. So you isolate yourself. You stop returning calls. You flake on plans. But that isolation only deepens the feeling of being alone and unworthy, which creates more shame, which leads to more isolation. The walls of your world begin to close in, and the silence gets louder and louder. The second is the addiction spiral. The pain of shame becomes so acute that you desperately search for an off switch. You seek to numb or distract yourself.
This can be anything: drugs, alcohol, pornography, gambling, endless work, even doom scrolling. These things offer a temporary escape, but they almost always wreck your life in other ways: your health, your finances, your relationships. This collateral damage creates fresh, new sources of shame, which in turn increases the desperate need to numb it, and the cycle deepens. The third is the most insidious: the self-sabotage spiral. When you live with toxic shame for long enough, you internalize the belief, "I don't deserve good things." So when a good thing finally appears in your life, a healthy relationship, a great job opportunity, a moment of peace, it creates a terrifying cognitive dissonance. This goodness doesn't match your internal story of being flawed and unworthy. So, unconsciously, you find a way to destroy it. You pick a fight, you miss a deadline, you push it away, just to restore the familiar, painful equilibrium of deserving nothing. You have either done this, or you have watched someone you love do this. This is the real-world cost of that ancient programming running unchecked in our modern lives. So, to break these cycles, we need to stop running. We need to turn on the lights. First, you need a map of your own inner territory. You need to diagnose your specific reaction. We have to distinguish the signal from the noise. First, let's make a critical distinction between healthy shame and toxic shame. Healthy shame is what you feel when you've genuinely violated your own values. It says, "I did something bad." This feeling is productive. It motivates you to apologize, to make amends, to be better. The goal of a healthy life is not to be shameless. That's the definition of a sociopath. The goal is to have a functioning sense of healthy shame. Toxic shame is entirely different. It doesn't say, "I did something bad." It says, "I am bad." It doesn't attack the action, it attacks your very identity. It offers no path to redemption. It simply says you are fundamentally and irrevocably flawed. This is the shame that paralyzes us and fuels those downward spirals. Researcher June Tangney put it perfectly. Guilt is about your actions. Shame is about your identity. Guilt says, "I made a mistake." Shame says, "I am a mistake." So, when that feeling of toxic shame hits, how do you react? According to the brilliant work of psychiatrist Donald Nathanson, most of us have a default, automatic response. He organized these into a model he called the shame compass.
When you feel exposed and flawed, your needle will point to one of 4 cardinal directions. The first point is withdrawal. This is the impulse to hide, to get small, to become invisible. You go silent in a meeting after you think you've said something stupid. You stay home from a party because you feel like a social burden. You physically and emotionally pull away from the world, hoping the feeling will pass if you just disappear for a while. The second point is attack self. Here, you turn the pain inward. This is the home of the relentless inner critic, of brutal perfectionism. You send an email with a typo and spend the rest of the day replaying it, calling yourself an idiot. You berate yourself for the smallest social misstep. You punish yourself for not being smarter, thinner, richer, better. Your own mind becomes the abuser. The third point is avoidance. This is the engine of the addiction spiral. Avoidance is the desperate attempt to distract or numb the feeling. You feel that familiar pang of inadequacy, and you immediately reach for your phone to scroll, or you pour a drink, or you bury yourself in work, lose yourself in a video game, start an argument, or even use humor and intellectualization to keep the raw feeling at bay. It's any compulsive behavior designed to change the channel from the broadcast of your own pain. The fourth point is attack others. When the feeling of being flawed is too painful to hold, you project it outward. You find a scapegoat. You get defensive and angry. You blame your partner, your boss, the system, the world for your problems. That driver who cut you off isn't just an annoyance, they become the focal point for all your self-loathing. Lashing out provides a momentary, powerful feeling of relief, because for a second, someone else is the bad one, not you. Withdrawal, attack self, avoidance, attack others. This is the compass. We all use all 4 points, but most of us have a primary, go-to direction, a default setting. So I'll ask you directly. Based on these 4 responses, which one is your primary go-to? Share your point on the compass in the comments below. You'll be surprised how many people share your direction. This compass is a powerful map, but maps are useless without seeing the territory. This isn't just theory, this is the human experience. Let's talk about what this looks like in real life, in our lives. Drew, on our team, has talked about the shame of growing up poor, the constant effort of hiding it, of trying to fit in. His default was avoidance, working relentlessly to create financial security, to distance himself from that feeling. But then he had to navigate the other side, the temptation to turn it into a badge of honor, another form of identity that kept him tied to the past. Massa, another member of our team, has shared her story of being an immigrant, the outsider shame of being pulled from class for English lessons. The friction with her parents over their conservative cultural expectations versus her desire for freedom and self-expression. Her compass often pointed to withdrawal, of making herself smaller to avoid conflict, and attack self, of feeling she was disappointing everyone. And then there's Jess's story. Jess grew up as a minister's daughter in a deeply conservative immigrant family. For years, she carried the multi-layered shame of her identity as a gay woman. Her compass spun wildly. She tried avoidance, trying to date men. She tried attack self, believing she was fundamentally broken. But ultimately, she was faced with an impossible choice, a choice many of you have faced in your own way. A choice between family loyalty and personal authenticity. She was torn in two. On one side was the need for belonging, the love for her parents, the foundation of her entire life. On the other was the undeniable truth of who she was, a truth that, if suppressed, felt like a kind of slow death. In the end, with immense pain and even more courage, she chose authenticity. It came at the cost of her relationship with her parents, a pain that is real and profound. But the alternative was to live a life that wasn't hers. It was a heroic act of choosing to save herself, even when it felt like she was losing everything else. We share these stories not for sympathy, but for recognition. These are the flavors of shame around money, culture, identity, family, love. They prove that you are not alone in this. Your struggle is not a bug in your system, it is a feature of being human. These stories are painful, but they hold the key. So how do we actually use this understanding to heal? What is the actual path from here? Alleviating toxic shame isn't a single event. It's not a switch you flip. It's a process. The journey is about moving from being unconsciously controlled by your shame to consciously accepting it as part of your story. It looks like a 4-stage journey, much like learning any new skill. Stage 1 is unconscious shame. This is where most people live. You're operating from a place of shame, but you don't know it. Your reactions, your point on the compass, are automatic. You just think, this is who I am. I'm just an angry person, or I'm just an anxious person. You're a prisoner who doesn't even know they're in a cell. Stage 2 is conscious shame. This is the painful awakening. This is probably where you are right now. You are aware that shame is driving your behavior. You can see the downward spirals. You know it's a problem. This stage is agonizing because you have the awareness of the problem, but not yet the tools to solve it. But this awareness is the essential, non-negotiable first step. Stage 3 is conscious acceptance. This is the work. This is where you use your map. You start to notice in real time when your shame is triggered and where your compass needle points. And you make a different choice. It's making the hard decision to tell a trusted friend the thing you're terrified to say. It's setting a boundary with a family member. It's practicing self-compassion when your first impulse is to attack self. It feels unnatural, clumsy, and terrifying. You are consciously practicing a new way of being. Stage 4 is unconscious acceptance. This is the goal. After enough conscious practice, your new responses become more automatic. The shame no longer controls you. It may still arise, but it doesn't hijack your system. You can look at it, acknowledge it, and let it pass without being pulled into a spiral. It's been integrated into your story, not as a source of secret pain, but as part of the journey that forged your strength and compassion. It's just a part of you, not the whole of you. The things you are most ashamed of, the parts of your story you have locked away in the dark, they are often the source of your greatest strength, your deepest empathy, your most unique and powerful gifts. The goal is not to erase them. The goal is to build a new relationship with them, one guided not by fear, but by your values. If this resonated and you want to continue this journey of deep understanding with us, the single best way to do that is to subscribe and turn on notifications. The comments below are proof that you are not alone in this. Finally, conversations like this are fragile. Save this video and maybe even share it with one person who needs to hear it. Don't let it get lost in the noise.